All right, everyone, there are a staggering number of people participating in a particular vein of propaganda right now, and I've made it clear, and I'll make it clear again. I do not have a side in the Israeli-Palestinian thing. I don't care because I'm not an Israeli and I'm not a Palestinian. If I was, I'd probably care more. I don't believe in getting involved in what's currently going on. But when I see propaganda, I'm going to point it out. This is something that happens to be one of this channel's particular fortes. When people are denying that Hamas raped hostages, captives, when they took them into Gaza, they're batshit out of their minds for several reasons. Number one, Hamas, their literal stated goal is the destruction of the entire state of Israel. If that's the case, then the idea that they respect the rights of non-combatants, that's probably a bit of a stretch. By the way, if you think the IDF isn't engaged in the same behavior, maybe not on the same organized level, but at least situationally, you're also fooling yourself, and that's the other reason. Rape is a tool of war. Unfortunately, the abuse of non-combatants in a sexual manner has two causes. And either of these can be the cause of situational sexual abuse, assault, rape, whatever it happens to be. And unfortunately, it often seems to be involving kids, which makes it even worse. There's two reasons why that happens. The first is you get a bunch of young fighting age males, mainly. Of course, you've also got much older conscripts, female soldiers and stuff at this point, but generally speaking, most militaries in the world remain mainly male and younger males. When they're in a war zone, shot full of adrenaline and endorphins and so forth, and when they've been told that the enemy is lesser than themselves, they're more referred to as animals than as human beings. You've got a situation where anything can and does happen. That's number one. And number two, you also have organized efforts, either by groups of individuals or even as a state or non-state doctrine, whereby people are horrifically abused as well as an attempt to humiliate them, to humiliate the captive, to humiliate the nation that they come from, to demoralize the enemy. It's a tool of demoralization. There's a reason why war propaganda over and over and over again depicts, Lady Liberty with her tits out being fondled by a Hun or something like that. It's effective propaganda because it evokes a stronger emotion among most people to try to protect your wife and kids, basically. It's a biological drive, and propaganda tends to manipulate biological drives. Likewise, the actual reality of rape and war, again, has to do with that same basic function. It attempts to demoralize the opponent. You can't even save your women. You can't even protect the children, basically. And so, it happens. Hamas absolutely raped most of the captives. Maybe not all of them, but I guarantee that most of them were gang raped. And when people deny that to be the fact, it's like, okay, I can understand. Okay, you don't support Israel. That's fine. I don't support Israel either. I just don't happen to support Palestine at the same time. That's okay. Maybe you just outright fucking hate Jewish people or something, but that doesn't mean that Hamas, literally having stated its intent within the region, is not capable of war crimes. Of course they are. You think if you get captured by Hamas that they're going to pat you on the head and say, it's all okay, don't worry, you're basically just ransom so that we can get back a couple of our dudes. Here's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something like that. I mean, again, I hate it when people have this weird, retarded football team mentality of everything political and strategic in nature. They're totally brainwashed. They think Group A I don't like, therefore Group B are virtuous and saintly. Dude, U.S. soldiers, just to be honest, U.S. soldiers in Vietnam were raping people. The Viet Cong did it too, of course, to dissident outlying villages. Everyone was raping each other, especially when they got their dextro in them. In Korea, there was mass rape. Of course, there's civilian massacres. Look at My Lai and some things like that. It's your boys that do that too, by the way. It's not just their boys. Every side is guilty of that kind of atrocity. You no longer have the kind of warfare that you had for a period of time, in much of the world at least, where it was pitched battle, civilians got far away, and the soldiers didn't generally interact with them in a meaningful manner. Like in the World War I trenches, not a whole lot of civilians are visiting the trenches. They probably wouldn't like what they saw if they did. They definitely wouldn't like the smell. Rotting feet. Interesting. Trench foot was a real bitch. It sucked for the soldiers, but the civilians were isolated from the battle, generally speaking. Yes, when the enemy advanced, they might be shelling your village or something and attempt to overrun it. People attempted to flee them. There would be captives, of course, from time to time, or the Revolutionary War or something. And there was rape in that war too. The British regulars and the Continentals were known for occasionally violating people who they felt were dissidents to them and their cause. That did happen. There was absolutely rape and abuse. But in pitched battle form, as far as the actual fighting, it took place in a field somewhere, or in the hills or something. Generally speaking, yes, there were skirmishes and so forth in villages and so forth, but when it was possible, typically pitched battle happened out in the hinterland somewhere. It was more strategically advantageous, especially for the regulars. They weren't used to urban combat necessarily. Rape absolutely happens in war. It's an unfortunate and very unpleasant topic to deal with. But when I see people that are denying, oh, Hamas didn't rape these women. No, she's got bloodstains running all the way down to her knees for absolutely no reason. She just has hemorrhoids or something. You let it go, dude. Come on. The fact that you don't support Mo West or Mo Israel or something doesn't mean that you need to be pro-Hamas. Get a life. You need to grow a few more neurons because the ones that are up there clearly aren't functioning properly. Yeah, is the IDF a moral army? No. The IDF is bombing 2-to-1 civilians right now, self-admittedly. By the way, that went under the news radar the other day, the fact that 2/3 of all the casualties in Gaza aren't combatants. That's Israel's estimate, by the way. That's not mine or Hamas's. Hamas probably said, oh, it's 10 civilians to every soldier. Well, probably somewhere in the middle of the two. I'm assuming that the IDF isn't deliberately overestimating the number of little kids that it's blowing up. It's not a moral army. Yeah, there's going to be rape in Palestine too, especially once the top-end fighting dies down and it becomes more of an insurgency against an occupation, which is literally what Israel is telling you it intends to do. There's going to be a lot more rape there. There will be retaliatory rape in the more organized sense, and assault and so forth, and the abuse of civilians in general. And then there will be also cases where somebody is just fired up on endorphins and just goes on a rape spree. This does happen in war. Every single war. Every single army in every single war. Where 2 or more are gathered and they're fighting together, you've got all sorts of endorphins shooting off, you've got propaganda, you've got the dehumanization of your enemy. Hamas does not see the Jews as human. The IDF doesn't see Hamas members as human. The problem being identifying the Hamas member in a crowd of civilians is rather difficult, hence the indiscriminate shelling that we're seeing right now in certain parts of now even southern Gaza. Yes, absolutely. It's propaganda when people are trying to tell you, no, Hamas would never do that. They're a moral army. Why? Because they believe in Muhammad or something? I don't think that makes any doctrinal sense, let alone any historical sense. That's about all. Peace out.